I would love to hear your voiceover origin story. What was your life before voiceovers, and what attracted to you to it, and what got you in it?
I feel like people have heard this a million times, but I'll try not to go too much beyond the Cliff's Notes version. But my life before voiceovers was childhood. So I started. I was that kid who had the tape deck with his buddies, and we would have our radio show, and
Hmm.
at 11 or whatever. And lo and behold, I'm being full of some degree of chutzpah. At 12, I was already running coffee for a couple of shock jocks in the Washington D.C. area after school.
Mm.
And because I was a fanboy. And by the age of 15, we had moved to Dallas, and I had started interning on a radio show there called Texas Money in the Afternoons, which was on Bloomberg Information Radio, 5 to 7 drive time, and it was run by a guy. It was hosted by a guy named Dan Foster,
Hmm.
and Dan was a guy who looked and sounded like Sam Elliott, right down to the mustache and the cowboy hat, and to even at 15, telling me, "You want to know the secret to having a nice deep voice on the air, boy? Said 2 fingers of warm gin before you go on the air." I'm like, all right, Dan, there you go. So in any case, I interned. He showed me how to, use the board and let me do a couple on-air segments here and there because my voice had already dropped. And then one day I got that internship through absolute sheer nepotism. And one day the owner of the radio station, a guy named Mike Russell, calls me into his office, and he was a friend of my father's, and he goes, well, kid, I'm gonna give you a break. And I said, what do you mean? He said, well, I know you've heard, and there've been rumors going around that they were going to sell the station. And he said, so we've sold the station, and it's going to change to Christian rock in a year after the FCC approves everything. He said, so Dan Foster just came in here and quit. And he said, so guess what? Texas Money in the Afternoons is yours for the next year. And if you run it in the ground, I don't care because I already got my contract signed. I'm not going to lose any money. He said, but if you keep the ratings up, maybe you'll have the radio career you want, right? And I wanted to be in radio. I wanted to be Howard Stern. My parents let me listen to too much crazy stuff when I was a kid, which probably explains a lot. But nevertheless, so I took over this show, and it was mostly just reading news copy off the Bloomberg terminals that they had there. But every now and then I do an interview over the phone, and I interviewed Dick Cheney when he was the CEO of Halliburton, the people in the Baird family, which is a powerful, food manufacturing family in Dallas, the guy who created Beavis and Butthead, Mike Judge,
Oh,
and
wow.
King of the Hill,
Hmm.
right? And I'm 15, 16 years old. But anyway, I'm getting paid nothing to do this show. And all of a sudden, after about a couple months on the air, the station sponsors start asking me to do their commercials. And I start actually getting paid to do the VO on these commercials. And it's $100 here, $200 there, right? But before I know it, I'm 16 and I'm earning $2 grand a month, $3 grand a month doing voiceover for radio commercials. I'm like, yeah, I'm taking girls to ball games and nice restaurants. I'm like, this is cool, right?
Mm.
So that's where the spark of, hey, wait a minute, maybe it's not radio, maybe it's this voiceover thing got started. And by the time I graduated college, I was making a living, modest living, but a legitimate living doing voiceover. I had a chance to go to Georgetown Law. I deferred for a year because I was already making like 40 grand, and didn't really want to be a public prosecutor. And so a year later, I make a little bit more, and I'm like, I'm gonna keep trying this. My family thought I was nuts passing up law school, but that was kind of the origin story. So it turned into a career.
Wow. Okay. And how did you discover your niche in voiceover?
Well, what I discovered early on is that, I at the beginning of my career, I was like I think a lot of people back then, just kind of a puker, right? And
Yeah.
I mean, it was back in the '90s and early 2000s, and most of what I was doing was commercial promo trailer, that kind of stuff, and it was all just big voice Bob. And in the '90s and early 2000s, you could print money doing that.
Hmm.
And as the market started to shift a little bit, as the DIY world of voiceover started to become a thing towards the mid 2000s, that's when I discovered, things like corporate e-learning, narration, and also when commercials started to shift a little more conversational, and suddenly I had to teach myself how to be an actor and not just a puker. And so, I mean, niche is for me, I'm one of these guys. I believe in being, don't be a jack of all trades, but at the same time, be a master of as many as you can.
Hmm.
And for me, over the years, I've gotten to where I book regularly in all but three three genres. I really don't play in audiobooks. I really don't play in animation, and I really don't play in video games. I have some of the character roles will drop into my lap just occasionally by accident through an agent or whatever, but
Yep.
generally speaking, those aren't areas where I do a whole lot of work, which is also why I don't have, if you look at my IMDb, it's like I just got into the industry, right? It's because we don't track commercials and stuff on there, so I don't have like some 9-page IMDb, but I'm not a character guy. So those are the areas I've just never gravitated towards. I don't do, ADR, dubbing, looping, lip sync, that kind of stuff. But all of the other genres over the years, I've been able to find a fairly steady stream of work. And then some, some come stronger at certain times. And trailers dying art these days. There's not much of that left anymore. So I try and get in where I feel like I can compete at a high level. And over the years, that's grown into 7 or 8 different genres, I think, primarily.
Yeah, that's about right. That's about right for me. For me too. It's about 7 or 8 genres: e-learning, explainers, corporate, commercial, a smidge of audiobooks, a smidge of cartoons, a
Mm,
smidge of video game, and political, which
yeah, which
you know,
I love. That's just food. It's just eating, man. That's lovely stuff.
I'm really enjoying I'm really enjoying the political, especially this year. Gotten very interesting, but we can talk about that. But we got some more people showing up. So if you folks
Hi,
have
Lynn.
questions, hi Lynn. If you have questions, you can start to pop them into the in the chat room, or if you have a longer question or whatever, you can raise your hand and I'll unmute you. But before we get into our first questions, I'm curious because the transition or the incorporation of going from purely being a voice actor into becoming a coach, and then on top of that becoming a demo producer, and then on top of that becoming a presenter, and on top of that becoming a conference producer. So tell me about the transition from being just pure voice actor to getting into coaching, mentoring, and producing demos.
Absolute accident of fate. And that's one of those dog that caught the car things too, where it's like their days at Anna and I look at each other like, why are we doing this? But we love it. No, so the coaching thing. I think the coaching thing came first. So the chicken and the egg. It was the coaching chicken that came first. And that was just a function. Probably, God, it's 2024, so probably 16, 17 years ago now, of just colleagues seeing stuff I was booking, seeing me out there and going, hey, can you help us do the same thing, right? And I'm pretty sure I charged $75 for the first coaching session I ever did. Had no idea what the hell I was doing, right? And started working with just a couple of people just on a somewhat casual basis. And then they started booking. And I was like, oh, wait a minute. Okay, so maybe I actually do have something that is of value here. And so then it kind of became a, casual offering. Hey, if, this is something else I'm doing, if you're interested. And there was interest, and more people came in. And next thing I know, more and more of those people are booking. And, back in those days, I was doing a lot of the online casting stuff. And that was back before Voices got evil. And they used to have their very public facing, top 10. And then next thing I know, it's all my people are up there. And I'm like, okay, this is really cool. Right. So I am a bit of a teacher at heart, so I think I just enjoy, at this point in my career, it's coaching is a money losing time suck, but I enjoy it. I enjoy seeing the success that people go out and have, and that they're able to go out and build their careers. I mean, I get 2 or 3 letters a year that say, "Hey, you helped me buy a house." And I'm like, there, you can't put a price on that. That's a really rewarding thing. So the demo thing sort of didn't really directly flow from the coaching. It was more of a realization as demos as the demo game became more targeted and more important, probably towards around 2009, 2010, 2011. It started becoming a bigger and bigger deal. What I started to realize was that, I mean, at that point, all of my demos were pretty much my work, right? And what I started to realize was that as I heard stuff like Chuck Duran was doing, and some of the big agencies were putting out, I'm going, wait a minute, this isn't all real work. This is stuff that's been engineered to sound even better in many cases than real work does. And I would get spots back where I was I'd do some big national. I'd be like, man, I can't wait to get that and put it on my reel. And I'd get it and I'd go like, what they do? I mean, they compressed the hell out of it for
Hmm.
TV or radio or whatever. Or why did they pick that take? Right.
Hmm.
Or whatever it might be. And so at some point I started to realize, wait a minute, I can actually do this. It's not that I'm saying it's going to be better than, what a company has paid hundreds of thousands of dollars for. But it may sound better because it's not being affected for air the way that some of those spots were. And especially back then, they were over loud, they were over compressed. It was not always good when you got them back. I remember doing Dave Fenoy's promo demo, and we went in and looked through all of his massive body of promo work, and there was only one that we wound up going, we want to put that on the reel
Hmm.
because we felt like we couldn't actually surpass the production quality on the other things, right? So again, for kind of the same thing where at first it was me doing my own, and then after that, there were a couple of people who heard those. Hey, can you do the same thing? I think I charged $300 for the first demo I ever did for somebody.
Oh wow.
Um, yeah, right. And I'm sure it was nowhere near the quality we put out now, but but at the same time it was kind of like, okay, is this something that's going to be helpful for people or not? And again, like the coaching, next thing I know, people are going, "Hey, I got an agent because I sent them the demo you made for me." And I'm like, "All right, well maybe this is a little bit more of a fine science that we can continue to refine." It's, when I see business opportunities, it's like, okay, this is something that now is a business. It's not just something I'm doing for, my own benefit or for some friends. All of a sudden there is an opportunity there. So it's just kind of, accidental encroachments into those areas that turned into natural evolutions into business. And,
Right.
and then we try to emphasize quality in what we do. And I think that's one of the reasons we've grown.
Right. Before we get to Annabelle's question, I'm curious, do you remember the first time you presented at a voiceover conference? Do you know,
Yes.
and what did you
Well,
talk
actually,
about?
I think it was that voice conference, although I co-presented with someone who sadly had a somewhat tragic fall off the face of the voiceover world. I don't know if you remember Kurt Kelly,
Yes, I remember Kurt
but
Kelly.
Kurt disappeared in a somewhat self-immolating way
Yeah,
many
yeah,
years ago.
I vaguely remember
Um,
something about that.
yeah, I liked Kurt back in the day, but we co-presented on, I want to say it was on online casting or something like that, at one of those voice conferences. The first time I presented on my own was the old Midwest voiceover conference in Columbus, Ohio.
Mm.
I think maybe the very first one that they did, which was a smaller conference, maybe 150 people, and it grew to maybe 200 before they blew that up. But I had a conversation with one of our VO Atlanta presenters, and at this event, who felt like their session didn't go well, and it was their first time presenting, and they felt like they just didn't do a great job, right? And it's somebody I know, and I've tried and I trusted this, and I'm sure it was fine, but they felt like they didn't do well, and I said, look, I remember the first time I actually did my own presentation, and I had a room packed with 100 people in it, and I had slides and notes and everything, and half the tech didn't work, and I had to go on just off the top of my head on a lot of it, and I was sweating, and the room was too hot, and I was wearing a blue shirt, and you could see the sweat coming through my shirt, and and when I left, I said I felt like the biggest idiot on the face of the earth, and yet afterwards, I still had 20 people come up and go, "Hey, say that was really good information, right?" You're never going to feel amazing. That's the first time is always going to be nerve wracking, but it was, yeah, I think that was the first time was the old Midwest conference.
Oh, okay. My first was FAFCON 3
Hmm.
in October 2011, and
Yeah, I
my
never got
motive.
to do the FAFCons.
Oh, like it was life changing. It literally changed my life, both professionally and personally. And that presentation that I did, which was talking about how to write a mission statement, how to write annual goals, and how to write an action
Hmm.
plan, it changed everything because it was my understanding that no one had ever taught anything about the business of voiceover before. So,
Right.
and as a result of that, that very day, somebody was sitting in the back of the room, and then that turned into a 10-year coaching stint
Oh, wow.
at a voiceover school. So that got me on my path. But enough about my nonsense. Annabelle has our first question today. She wants to know, what are some key events you should attend at conferences?
Yeah, and the answer I always give to that is it depends on where you are in your career. So, for newer talent, I always say go to stuff like Tom. Go to the business stuff. Go to the stuff that's going to teach you how to book the work, how to find the work, how to, how to actually go out there and monetize this. Because that's, I remember talking to Gerald back in the day when we were just sponsoring VO Atlanta, and he would always say the business sessions never get anybody. Nobody ever shows up. The X sessions sell 3 people, and people don't pay enough attention to the business side. The performance side is great. Yeah, you want to go in with the agents and the casting directors and everybody else. But at the end of the day, the chances of getting signed or remembered by one of those people versus actually getting takeaways from a business session as a newer talent that you're going to be able to implement into your workflow and actually help you generate income are much lower. So go to the business stuff if you're new. If you're experienced, I'm a big believer in conferences are a great place to spread your wings. And if I go sit in at something at a conference, it's often going to be an animation session, or a video game session, areas I don't play in all that much, right? I'll go sit in on Michael Surix from Bright School, who's one of the most brilliant directors I've ever encountered, and just listen to what they have to say because it's just an area that I'm not as familiar with. So get into the stuff that if you're an experienced talent and you're looking to expand into areas that may be outside of your comfort zone a little bit, as opposed to just kind of hearing the same information over and over again. I will say, of course, anybody in the casting space, if you can get in there and just hear the insights they're giving you, it's amazing to me. The diversity of perspectives that you get from casting professionals, agents, managers, casting directors, people at production companies, ad agencies. I just got back from New York. I did a session this past weekend with Billy Kalura from CESD, who runs their commercial department in New York. And one of the things I always tell my workshop groups before I do an agent session is I don't pre-screen what they're going to tell you. Okay, I'm going to coach you in the morning, and usually if it's commercial, I coach commercial in the morning, and then they do commercial in the afternoon. And I tell him what he comes in here and says maybe completely different from what I tell you. Okay, doesn't mean I'm wrong or he's wrong. It just means that if you want to sign with CESD in New York, you better know what the hell it is they're looking for, right? And what was really interesting to me about that session actually was how in the New York market and whatever accounts that Billy's working, I got the sense that he's working with stuff that still is a little bit more in your face, because all the LA people are do less, go under, pull back, and he's going no. He said punch the U, give me more. He's got there's one guy who flew in from Chicago who's just big voice Bob, right? And he's asking him for more. And I'm like, oh, this is fun. We don't get to go down this direction all that often, right? So get in the room with these people because if you want to be with a particular agent or agency, you have to know what it is they're casting and what it is they're looking for and what it is their tastes are, and they're all different.
Right. I got to speak to your about how nobody shows up for the business stuff at conferences. Is that I've gotten comfortable with the fact that no one is ever going to put money down to attend a conference to see me. I'm okay with that. I'm okay
or
with
me,
that.
or anybody, usually any one of us, right? It's like
they're going there to meet the agents, the casting directors, and the performance coaches, and they want to get in front of the casting directors to see if they can get a relationship. They want to get in front of the agents to see if they could get represented, and they want to get in front of the coaches because they want to see if this is someone they want to work with. So I'm totally cool with all of that. With that in mind, as you know, I did an X session, make working from home work for you. And there's 12 slots, and I had 7 people attend at the beginning,
which is good,
which is
for a business session.
Which is a great number for a business session. I was over the moon. But here's the thing: is that of those 7 people, which I think were 4 male, 3 female, ranging from age 20 something to 60 something, more than half of them had never done a voiceover before, ever. And more than half of them had never attended a conference before, much less VO Atlanta. And 6 of the 7 had never even heard of me before. So the fact that these people who had never done a voiceover, who had never been to a conference, and had never heard of me, so that my reputation didn't attract anybody to it, said, you know what? I need to figure out how to work from home as a voice actor. And they haven't even done a voiceover yet.
Right.
I think that speaks extremely well to VO Atlanta, to your marketing. And also, I've been worried about, like, is AI driving away people? Is it deterring people? Is it preventing them from coming into the industry? But when I get a room of people and that's what their background is and that's what their mindset is coming into this conference,
Right.
I think that speaks really well for the culture of the voiceover industry. And people are still coming, and people still want to give it a shot.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And yeah, if AI slows down a little bit of the flux of newbies, it's not the worst thing in the world either.
Well, yeah. Well, and I was having a
But
conversation. I was having a conversation with somebody about that, but it's like, but
yeah, but no, it's people are still attracted. Well, look, I mean, I think people instinctively recognize, and not to go off on the AI tangent, but
yeah.
I was reading an article. What was it was a major news publication about we're entering the area of AI BS. And one of their big takeaways was that all these companies are talking about AI, but that no, it's all on the surface. That most of them really aren't doing much of anything with it.
Mhm.
That it doesn't do as much stuff, and it's not as effective as it's a little bit like crypto as it's being pitched as, at least yet, right?
Mhm.
And on top of that, it's very quickly among the consumer. AI content is starting to become synonymous with spam.
Mm.
So I really feel like in a lot of ways, despite the fact that, there are going to be some jobs that go to AI, there are going to be some clients who just don't want to spend on human voice actors, that the general public, the buyer base out there is hearing anything that's AI and seeing anything that's AI in the creative space. It's different if it can teach somebody how to do a surgery better, right? Or if it can create a drug fast or whatever. But in the creative space, I think there's this just an instinctive reaction going, this is garbage.
Yeah.
And it almost doesn't matter how good it gets. The label of AI is now starting to attract the same, again, connotation as spam. And I think that may be the saving grace for a lot of us, is the fact that a lot of people just instinctively go, you know what, we don't want to put our brand we don't want to attach our brand to creative AI because people are going to think we're spammy.
Right. And AI is now becoming akin to deepfake. So if they know that something
Yeah.
is AI generated, they're going to question the viability of the content itself.
The word fake is just like inherently attached to it.
Right.
And it's all we've been talking about in voiceover for 10 years is authenticity. And
Mhm.
it's the antithesis of that.
Right, right. And they're also questioning the motivation of people behind that are using AI. So
Yep.
yeah, it's interesting. We don't know how what's going to happen when the dust settles in the next 2 to 5 years. I do think the voiceover industry will contract, but not that much now that we've got another
I'm
full year
deeply
under the
not
belt.
scared by it.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not
And
deeply scared by
and
it
I
either.
look, I'm a business person. I wouldn't be buying conferences and expanding my businesses in the voiceover industry if I really felt a substantial risk. And
Yeah.
I just don't.
I agree. Tanya, she has a shout out to Ohio. Yay. She says, in addition to specific job titles we might market to that are genre specific, i.e., political, are there broad marketing targets prospects where we might promote, share multiple demos concurrently if we have them, in addition to ad agencies, for example?
Well, I mean, I think that's the easy answer is ad agencies, production companies are your two places that are going to be interested in more of your demos, other than talent agencies, obviously. Also,
Mhm.
that's production companies in particular. By the way, ad agencies are cool, but the thing about ad agencies is that while and again, this is not to discourage anybody from marketing to ad agencies, but ad agencies are a little more likely to be using a third party, an agent, a casting director, or another third party to hire their creative than a production company. There are more production companies that keep internal rosters, or at least that use internal rosters regularly, than there are ad agencies. That's not to say it doesn't happen frequently with ad agencies. It's just to say that with production companies, it's a little bit more common. So I'd be targeting production companies first and foremost. The other thing is one of my little sneaky tricks is a lot of people talk about don't market to your fellow voice actors. Well, I agree with that. However, I love accumulating voice actor contacts on LinkedIn. You know why?
Hmm.
Because it helps me cross-reference when I'm marketing and I get a target somewhere at some company that seems to be a potential buyer. I can see mutual connections. And immediately, if I see they're connected to three of my voice actor friends, I know, oh, I got a buyer. And if they're not, I can search a little deeper into their organization and see some of their other contacts. And then I land on one and they're connected to 6 people I know who are VOs. Hey, there's my buyer. That's the person to talk to at that organization, right? So that's why I keep 5,000 VO connections in addition to, 2,500 buyers and a couple thousand random ones on LinkedIn. It's because I can cross-reference and see who knows the VO people, right? And this works in political too. Political can be hard to figure out who the people who are making the decisions are. You go to a consultancy or you go to a PAC and start going down through the list of their employees on LinkedIn. All of a sudden you land on one and they're connected to 6 of your voice actor friends. Hey, guess who's buying voiceover at that consultancy? There you go.
So you're relying on your voiceover friends to vet
Damn right
clients for you.
Damn right. And I welcome people to mutually be symbiotic with that and come and steal all my contacts and connect with me, and you can come do the same thing. But it's an extremely effective little shortcut.
No, that's very clever. I've been unconsciously doing that, just noticing. Though sometimes I like the less mutual connections they have, the better, because then I think, oh, I've struck upon the voice secret.
If it's one or for me, it's if it's one or two, sometimes that's I'd rather see that than 50.
Right.
Because if it's one or two, they're hiring, but they've got one or two that they like, and maybe they don't have a me yet, right? Whereas it's I had one I was doing this on a Gravy for the Brain thing, and I didn't prepare it. I was doing it cold because I wanted people to see it in the wild, right? And we landed on one buyer for e-learning at Microsoft that was connected to everybody from Mark Grau to 90 new talent that and you can tell that this person's just got a roster, right? And that they're a buyer for e-learning at Microsoft. But it's like, again, just kind of going down the rabbit hole. You can do this for hours. It's really, really. I don't. And again, I don't. I'm terribly guilty of not watching what other people teach at conference. That's stuff that I run, right? So I don't know if anybody else uses it this way, but for me, it's been super effective in terms of just kind of cutting through the BS and finding the people who are really good potential buyers.
Well, I will tell you. I mean, I've seen Tracy Lindley, our friend, present on LinkedIn for 6, 7, 8 years now, and I don't think I've ever heard her use that particular tack, which either means I haven't noticed it, she doesn't use it, or she uses it and she's
well. And the trick is for it to be effective, you've got to have like 5,000 voice actor connections, right? So that's the sneaky trick.
Okay. Very cool. Before our next question comes in, we were talking about VO Atlanta before, and you had Jay O'Connor, the relatively new CEO of Voices.com on, and you asked me to be there, but you didn't tell me why, because I didn't know that Jay O'Connor was going to be there. I was actually sitting next to Miranda Ellis, our friend from VA for VO, and we're like, "Hey, who's that guy?" And we're like, "I don't know." And then I said, "Hey, do you know what's been going on lately?" And I told her about the whole Jay O'Connor thing, and then all of a sudden, then you said, "And Jay O'Connor," and I'm like, "Oh no, there he is!" So that was very clever of you, sir. But it was very interesting. And I know you had a conversation with him about that before, but the apology question I thought was very, very.
It was. I will tell you, it was a condition. It was a condition of his appearing.
Okay.
I had, the year before, despite all and what's funny is I don't know that David Cicerelli ever actually had hate in his heart for me, despite the fact that I sued them and everything else. I think he's a clever enough guy to know business is business, right? And a year ago, or a little over a year ago, before VO Atlanta, I said it during the session, David wrote me an email saying, "Hey, can we come back? Can we sponsor? Can we whatever?" And I told him, I said, "Look," I said, "No." I said, "But I won't say never." I said, "But you need to one of two things has to happen. You either have to create a public appetite for your participation, by doing some act of contrition or changing the way you guys operate, or there needs to be a change of leadership." Okay. Because at the end of the day, the credibility of that leadership was just gone.
Yeah.
And so when Jay took over, when they essentially kicked David out and Jay took over, Karin Gilfrey introduced me to him because he had been talking to NAVA, and I expressed an interest in having him at Atlanta. But I told him, I said, "Look," I said, "I've got two conditions. One is we're not taking any money from you. Okay. And that was a third condition. But condition number one is first questions I'm going to ask is an apology. And I need you to tell me, to promise me that you will say you're sorry or that you will apologize on that stage. And if you can't do that, I'm not bringing you. He said, I will do it. Okay. So, oh, good. Second one was no holds barred, right? So I told him, I said, it's going to be 15, 20 minutes. We're going to chat up here and then it's going to go to the floor. And I can't predict what's going to happen when it goes to the floor. And I said it could be, and to be honest with you, compared to the first time Rolf came out, especially to the UK at One Voice, where I fed him to the lions. As much as we think we're tough in the US, the UK crowds are brutal, man. I mean, they just tore him limb from limb. Right. Jay didn't get it too bad, but I thought it was important because they are, regardless of what you think about voices.com, and I haven't been on the site in 8 years, but they are, a Morgan Stanley owned, probably nine-figure valuation corporation that is going to continue to be a player in the industry, whether we like it or not. And my hope for Jay, and we'll see, because the proof is in the pudding, but my hope for Jay is that it turns out like Rolf has with Voice 123, where not everybody loves Rolf, not everybody loves Voice 123, but the thing that I think we all have come to respect about Rolf is that he will always give us a direct and candid answer. It may not be what we want to hear, but he will always answer the question. And if Jay does the same thing, I think they have an opportunity to reintegrate themselves into the community.
Yeah. When I was watching that exchange and hearing the apology, I was thinking about the term responsible. David Ciccarelli and his regime was responsible for all the nonsense and all the stuff that everybody can just go on Google and look at your blog and my blog and, from up of 10 years ago. But also you break down the word responsible, able to respond. While Jay was not responsible for all the stuff that happened before he got there, he is able to respond to all the things that went on. So he is responsible, as in he is in response able. And he said they're working on things. He gave the company an F on a number of fronts, and he's going to be working on things. I'll be honest, I rejoined in September when they updated their terms of service and signed the NAVA Fair Voices pledge, because I'm like, all right, let's give it a shot. And see what's going on. So I know both you and I and many of our voiceover friends will be keeping a close eye on Mr. O'Connor.
Well, I think action speaks louder than words, and he's had his chance now to talk to the community and to understand what is out there and the way people feel. And I think they need to. I personally feel like there needs to be some overt act on their part of essentially some give back, whether that is reducing the professional services fee, or is something that hits their bottom line a little bit, where they say, okay, we're gonna eat this and we're gonna do it as a sign of goodwill because we know we have lost that goodwill. I think if they go down that road, that would win a lot of people back over.
I think when Miranda asked about why are there casting notices that have broadcast rights in perpetuity, and he said we're not going to lose those because we lose a lot of money. Honestly, I think I would love to see that one go, because I don't know any voice actor who understands the industry who is willing to participate in that because of all the permanent conflicts that can create. So for me, if they just drop that one right there, which would hit them in the wallet, I think that would go a long way, because that hurts them, but it also actively protects the voice actors from, and I mean, and I'm sure there are some voice seekers on there who just can't be bothered with rebuys and stuff like that. They just want the local radio spot forever, so they don't have to deal with it again. But that still could create conflicts. But anyway, but no, thanks for talking about the voices.com thing. It's fascinating, and who knows what they're going to be, what things are going to be like in the next couple of years. I know you've got One Voice is coming down the pike. I assume you attend the One Voice UK, yeah?
Yeah, briefly. So we have our retreat finishes that weekend. So I'll be flying over on the Saturday and probably doing a session Saturday afternoon, and then I usually present their inspiration award on the Sunday. So I'll do that, and then probably fly right back to Luxembourg. So I'll be there for one night. But I always do make a little appearance at the UK conference.
Oh, the retreat, the one in Ireland, yeah.
No, this Barcelona one in May.
Oh, okay. Ireland is later. Ireland is later in
Ireland's in
the year.
October.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, very cool. Can you talk to us a little bit about what we can expect at One Voice Dallas this year?
Yeah, so I mean, One Voice Dallas is what I love about One Voice in general, and the Dallas one in particular is that to me it's kind of the rock and roll conference. And what I mean by that is that VO Atlanta is it's the Super Bowl, it's pageantry, it's everybody and their brother, it's 100 presenters and it's 1,000 attendees. One Voice is now I think we'll probably hit 500 attendees this year, so it's continuing to grow. We were I think about 400 last year, and hold on a second. Bad.
Somebody else wants to
I
interview you. They can
that
wait.
I can't. I've never figured out how to turn that off on this computer either.
That
With
sounded like
the
Skype. Was
Skype,
it
it is
Skype?
Skype, yeah. But in any case, and if it happens again, my apologies.
No
But
worries.
some people can't take a hint when I do that. But yeah. So One Voice is kind of the rock and roll conference versus the Super Bowl. And I mean, a good example of that is when we do the One Voice Awards, right? Where I mean, literally, not this past year, but I think 2 years ago, it opened with Hugh and Harry literally jamming out on tabletops. I mean, like rock stars. And it's got a looser, more casual, more fun, um, more freestyle vibe. The presenter lineup, obviously, we got a lot of our heavy hitters, but we're mixing them up a little bit. So people you didn't see at Atlanta, like Tom Keegan, who's a great video game director, Vince Labica, who from DPN, who didn't come out to VOA this year because they're about to pop a baby, will be out at One Voice. Billy Kalura from CSD is going to come out, who I just did the workshop with. I've got somebody from Atlas. I just got to get her signature on paper before I can announce her. Bob Bergen's going to come. Sumiti Iyengar from Coat Management, who used to be with CSD. So, you're going to get some great casting pros who you didn't see at Atlanta. And the idea is we try and keep the lineups a little bit different. You are going to get some of the classics. Obviously, Mary Lynn's going to be there. We're going to have Kristen Paiva will be back. So there'll be some of the ones that we're used to seeing at most of these things, but that's because they're in demand. And then we've got a really cool lineup of just general presenters who, I draw from. What I really like about One Voice is that we try to draw people who are a little more in the trenches, the people who are doing the thing right now. Voice actors who are high five figures to mid six figures, who are out there booking. Or these are people who are booking every single day, right? And who are doing the work now, and who not necessarily people who were doing the work 30 years ago, right? And so I think it's cool that we have, just kind of looking over this list a little bit, people like John Armand, who a lot of people know, who's big commercial guy who's kind of under the radar, but he's a heavy booking, daily rotation national TV voice. Mike Tobin is going to come out. Matt Curtis, who's a great, we're some JMC demos team, but he's a great video game and animation guy, is going to come out. Lynn is in the room. Lynn's going to be one of our presenters again. We're going to bring Liz Atherton back, who I don't think she's been to a conference in a couple of years, so we'll have her back. Jen Tafoni will make her debut as a conference speaker. Chris McCloy is a regular booking talent. And I'm just looking at like 20 or 30 people here, but we've got about 40, 45, 50 presenters. Jordan Reynolds, Mara Juno will both be there. So just really great people, but it's the people who are out there kicking ass, every single day, and not necessarily the legends who have been around forever and ever and ever. It's those who are out there with us, competing for the same work we're doing on a daily basis, and you get to hear how they're doing it and how they're being successful with it. And of course, I believe you'll be there also, correct?
If you'll have me, I'd love to come back.
I mean, it's going to be a great group. So,
cool. I assume the keynote is going to be a surprise announcement a little bit.
No, we announced it in Atlanta. It's Jennifer Hale.
Oh, it's Jennifer Hale. Oh,
yeah.
I love Jennifer.
Yeah, Jennifer's great, and she's one of the great video game actors of the last 20 years or so, and still actively booking the biggest roles. So
I'm watching X-Men '97 actually.
Right,
she's playing Jean Grey Marvel Girl. Like I'm watching that. Yeah, I've recently joined the Skills Hub family.
Oh, very cool, very cool.
Yeah, so I'm one of their coaches. Oh,
Jennifer's great, and actually we have exciting. The GBAA is sponsoring, but they're also speaking. So Christina Malizia and David Rosenthal will be there also.
David Toback, I presume.
I don't think we have Toback as a presenter this year,
He'll probably be manning
but
the booth
he'll
then.
be there for NAVA or GVA in one capacity or another, I'm sure.
You know, I'm glad you mentioned Nava. I just love to get your insight on. I mean, this is a slurpy softball-y question, but on what an amazing job they're doing.
Right. Well, and they are. I mean, that's, the great thing about NAVA is that they're in many ways fulfilling, I think, the mission that Wovo set out to do many years ago, but just never quite came together.
Mm,
Nava's out there taking action. Nava's out there kicking ass, taking names, getting stuff done. Health insurance for non-union voice actors. They're fighting the AI battle on our behalf. They're helping with people who have been harmed by predatory coaches and demo producers. They have a legal fund. And there's a reason we, kind of christened that industry champion award at VO Atlanta with SAG-AFTRA and with Karin and Tim.
mm,
And it's largely because of the fact that I know the amount of effort that they're putting in. And I know what that has done. I know what it's done to Tim's bottom line, because this is what he's living, breathing, and eating every day. And he's making enormous sacrifices
yeah.
on all of our behalfs. Karin's doing the same thing. They're going to Washington. They're talking to legislators. They're trying to get AI legislation passed. They're trying to protect us. They're trying to help us. And they are doing it selflessly and without. It's so easy to take something like that and twist it into something that serves somebody's own interest or something political, and they're
Mhm.
not. These are just good people who want to help, and that goes down through their whole team. And there's a reason that the three people who got nominated for the Unicorn Award this year were the somewhat less visible people behind the scenes at NAVA, but they're all NAVA board members. And it's but the founders committee came together, and out of the 21 people that were our short list of finalists, these three just really stood out.
Yeah.
They're doing damn good work, and it's my privilege, and it's VO Atlanta's privilege, and JMC Demo's privilege to stand behind them and support them and contribute in whatever way we can.
One, you've used the term ecosystems. I know you've used the term in relation to Fiverr, for
Right.
people who use Fiverr. And one thing that I think is so important about what they're doing is that there is no sense of tribalism in
Right.
it, because everything they're doing is helping protect SAG-AFTRA members, non-SAG-AFTRA members, Voice 123 users, non-Voice 123 users,
Right.
Fiverr users, Upwork users, anybody that is doing voiceover on any level for any genre at any pay scale, whether union or non-union. They're looking out for everybody, because
Right.
everybody can get exploited by bad actors with AI. Anybody can get their auditions harvested. Anybody can get leverage rates when they don't understand the rate. Everybody needs
Right.
health insurance. So I think what they're doing is amazing. So I want to keep talking about them as much as humanly possible, every venue possible, because of the good work that they are doing.
Right.
We usually wrap up at about an hour, but I'm going to give everybody a chance to squeeze in a couple more questions. Oh, we got a little applause from Annabelle. Thank you very much. So while people are coming up with some last minute questions before we wrap up, tell us a little bit about the JMC coaching and JMC demos process if somebody wants to work with you and your team.
Sure. Well, I mean, the first thing is we're going to just pre-qualify you to make sure that you are ready for that. And we get all kinds of different people out there. We get people who are full-time working pros. And I had somebody come in for a demo the other day, and they were like, "Hey, do I need to do coaching?" I'm like, "I'm not going to make it mandatory. I know who you are. I listen to your stuff. But if we can do a demo." There are other people who come in completely new, and we'll put them through an eval, or they'll send us. I always tell people, actually, if you want to save money on an eval session, send 5 or 10 auditions that you've done, or 5 or 10 things you've recorded. Let me put my ears on them. I don't charge you for that. And there are many times just based on that, I can say, okay, go do Gravy or GVAA or VO Peeps or something else for some subscription service for a while, or maybe rethink your choices in life. But if I mean, that some people need to hear that. I'm not of the school that anybody can be taught to do this. There's some coaches out there so you should never tell somebody it's not going to work for them. I think that's horseshit. I mean, I think this is if somebody wants to be a professional singer and they're tone deaf, I mean, you're not going to, there are
Yeah.
things you can't teach, right?
Yeah. Right.
So at the end of the day, there is at least a minimum inherent level of ability necessary to do this on any kind of professional level. So yeah, I mean, in terms of working with us, the first process is just what do you want to work on? What's your experience level? What do you have that can show us what you can do? If there's nothing there, then again, the talent evaluation is something I offer, and that's essentially a session in a blender where I'll just put you through your paces and a bunch of different content. And I always joke that I give one of three answers at the end of that, and 40% of the time it's don't quit your day job, and you're welcome to seek a second opinion. 40% of the time it's maybe go work with a subscription service for a year or two, and then come back and holler at me after you've got your feet wet. And it's only about two out of 10 when I do a talent eval where I go, okay, if you work with a coach, if you put some months of training into this, that you probably will be ready to do demos and go out and be marketable. If you go down that road, then great. If you're coming in and you're experienced and you're just looking to do a demo in a new genre, sometimes I'll work with you just for a few hours to get you ready in that genre, or one of our other coaches will, or whoever you want to work with. I think the biggest thing is just making sure it's a good fit. There's an article I've got on my. I'm really bad at selling myself. There's an article I've written on my blog. If you ever want to go read it, it's called "Why I'm Not the Right Coach for You." And basically what it does is it breaks down coaching styles into a few different categories. There are people who learn differently. There are people who communicate differently. There are people who just engage with people differently. And sometimes I'm going to be the perfect fit. Sometimes somebody on my team's going to be the perfect fit. Sometimes Ann Ganguza is going to be the perfect fit, or Chuck Duran's going to be the perfect fit, or somebody else. So, I think you need to, if you're doing this smartly, and you're thinking about coaching or demo production, talk to a handful of us, and figure out who you vibe with. Figure out who you're like, all right, this is somebody that because you're going to spend some time with us, right? So if we're going to be talking and engaging for some number of hours, you're going to want that not to get old, and you should talk to a few people and just make sure it's the right fit. So all that literature is out there if you want to read about my process. I'm not good at selling it.
You got to work on that. In my years as coaching, I've noticed that there's like 4 archetypes. There's the cheerleader, the drill sergeant, the therapist, and the professor. And most coaches have some overlap. Like I think we can safely say Nancy Wolfson is primarily drill sergeant. And I say that with love because, she does what a friend of mine calls fierce hand-holding, gentle ass-kicking, and fierce hand-holding, or something like that. But everybody has their own style. So I'm professor therapist. I'm curious, of those 4, drill sergeant, cheerleader, professor, therapist, how would you categorize yourself?
That's an interesting way of putting it. Probably professor first, with just a sprinkling of the other 3 in there. The way it's because I guess we all frame it a little bit differently. The way that I break it down is in 3 parts, and I have what I call didacts, and then creatives and technicians. And of those lists, so somebody like Nancy or Ann would fall into the didact group. Ann's going to give you reams of homework. Okay. I am not. I believe you learn performing on mic and not doing busy work in the meantime. And that's not to say there's anything wrong with that method, because there's some people who that's how they learn. They want the reams of homework. They want clear laid out assignments and the syllabus and everything else. You're not going to get that from me. Okay. What you're going to get are sessions where we are going into the deep minutia of your reads and talking about the sociopsychology behind why commercials are written the way that they are and how that affects the performance and why this little element is the way that it is, and also the fact that there aren't as many rules as there used to be, and that changes depending on what genre you're talking about. But I'm a creative first, and a technician, maybe 60% creative, 40% technician, and only maybe a sprinkling of the didact in there. So it's a question of what there are people who really do want that syllabus structure, point by point. This is how it's going to go. And if that's you, I'm probably not your guy.
Right.
If you want somebody who you're going to get in and it's like a jam session and we're going to have fun and we're going to go into deep creative spaces that you've never explored before, I probably am your guy. And also the technician thing I think is interesting in that this is one place where I don't think enough coaches focus on is literally sometimes just technique of a little louder, a little faster. Let's play with tempo. Let's play with pacing. Let's play with timing. Let's play, things that there's so much of the creative. All right, let's come from the heart. Let's connect. Let's act. That's great. That's important. That's a huge part of what I teach. And then there's so much of the why and the how, but not enough of the turning of the knobs sometimes. And I think that sometimes the turning of the knobs, understanding, why mic technique on a specific read is important and why sometimes, there is a luxury car read. The way it sounds is probably a little more important than the acting behind it because it's a specific voice print that they're looking for on that. And yeah, you need to connect with the copy. You need to be able to move the listener. But at the same time, if you, sound like you're 25 and you're doing a $125,000 car, it probably isn't quite right. You need to pitch your voice a little bit differently. So, yeah, I love getting into the weeds with the performance side of it.
Cool, cool. Joy in the comments says she's looking to make another demo. So that's a perfect way to wrap this up, as in where can people find you if they want to get some coaching or get a demo produced?
Absolutely. So if demos are what you're really interested in, jmcdemos.com is where you want to start because that's where you can hear a gazillion of our samples and you see lots of our references and any of the people up there you can talk to about their experience and see how it went for them. Coaching, similarly, you can go to jmcvoiceover.com or jmcdemos.com. They both will eventually take you to the same place and you can click on the coaching tab and learn a bit more about what we do, or just email me, jmichael@jmcvoiceover.com, and I can send you all the literature about my process and my rates and all that good stuff.
Very cool. When I put this up on YouTube, I have your bio and I'll have your links on there so everybody can check that out. And we are just about out of time. JMC, thank you so much for
Thank
hanging
you for
out
having me.
for the hour. And we had some very lovely folks in the audience who had some very, very lovely questions. It was great talking to everybody. But yes, make sure you go to voatlanta.me to sign up for VO Atlanta 2025. Go check out onevoiceconference.com to sign up for One Voice UK if you want to make the trip or if you're already there.
I'm
Or
gonna throw a
One
little
Voice.
teaser just at
Yeah.
the people watching too, and this is short-term teaser because they'll go fast. We're going to have the booking link from the Hilton for next year's VO Atlanta, where as anybody who's come to VO Atlanta knows, we only get like 200 and some rooms, and then they're gone. So we're gonna have the link like tomorrow or Monday or Tuesday, and then we're going to let people know that that link is out there. If you want to stay at the Hilton in 2025, you should probably book your VO Atlanta ticket in like the next 2 or 3 weeks because those will go very, very fast, and then it'll be partner hotels after that. So just keep that in mind.
Oh, good. Very good information. Thanks for sharing that. All right. Well, JMC, thank you very much for coming. All of you, thank you so much for coming. Thanks for hanging out here at the VO Strategist Ask Me Anything. If you want to get a little more information on how to navigate the voiceover industry, go to vostrategist.com. Click on that free 15-minute consult booking link, and I'll be glad to talk to you about any part of the voiceover industry that you wish. Also, don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel, connect with me on Instagram and LinkedIn, book that 15-minute consult, check out my VO how-to video library, and stay cool, stay safe, and happy voicing. Thanks, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.